Welcome to the Deer Hunter Podcast, a platform created to entertain, educate, and evolve the modern-day deer hunter.
Congrats! You've reached Dan's phone. Currently, I'm chest deep in swamp muck, wrestling a 20-pound coon. But if you leave your name and number, I will call you back if I make it out alive.
At the tone, please record your message. When you have finished recording, you may hang up or press 1 for more options.
Hey Dan, it's Kevin. I was just calling to start the podcast, but apparently I missed you, so I'll call you right back. You guys just get a little cool front there.
Yeah, it was nice today.
Yeah.
It's only like 70.
Right. I think the low tonight is 49 degrees.
Oh, that sounds nice.
I know. I just set a tent up actually in my backyard. We might do a little family camp out tonight.
There you go.
Can you hear me good on your end?
Yeah.
Okay, great. You been thinking about deer hunting?
When don't I think about deer hunting?
I don't know. You're probably thinking about bear hunting too, right?
Yeah, a little bit, yeah.
You, when are you going to start putting baits out?
You know, I don't know. I'm contemplating skipping it. I'm just running so late that I'm just thinking that I'm not going to get anything going good in time.
Oh, really?
It's so hard to keep up with the bears from long distance. I mean, Wisconsin sucks for the do-it-yourselfer unless you live right where the bears are.
Yeah.
Minnesota is so much better, the way they're set up.
Really? Why is that?
Yeah. Minnesota, you only bait for 3 weeks, and there's no limit on how much bait you put out. So they open baiting on April 15th, and they open bear hunting on September 1st. So I drive 8.5 hours to bait one way. I do it 3 times, and I put out a truckload at every bait. And I have yet to not limit everybody in my camp out in the last 15 years of hunting up there. But in Wisconsin, they start baiting April 14th or April 15th or something like that. And the guides start right away, and they all bait every other day for the whole season until July, and then they bait every day. And there's a limit of 10 gallons. So you put 10 gallons out, the first bear in eats 10 gallons, and you're out of bait. So for me, being 2.5 hours from bears, I can't drive up there every day and bait. So once a week ain't cutting it. The bears come in, they find the bait, they eat it, they hang around a little bit, they leave, they never come back. And you got to pull them back in, they find it again. It just doesn't work.
I had no idea that they started that early.
Yeah. Yeah, to me it's problematic.
You think so?
And they got hound hunters here that this section is closed to hound hunting, but they opened it up to training, and they train up to a week before season, and the hounds are running the bears off all the baits, constantly.
Right.
I get pictures of the hounds on the baits, and they say that the hound hunters tell you that it doesn't matter. But you see bears on a consistent pattern until all of a sudden you got hounds on your camera, and then the bear pattern sucks.
Oh, yeah. Right.
They get nocturnal, they come in real sporadic.
I had a lot of fun doing that last year. I was just looking at some photos, and I think, what was it, August last year when we did that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I was going to offer, if you're running baits, come up one weekend and jump in my truck and go out there for a day and help you put some baits out. But, yeah, I know you got other stuff going on, so it'll probably be a tough year for you. You're going to have to split some priorities, huh?
Yeah, it's just so hectic. I might still do it. I mean, I got some friends offering to help and stuff, but even so, it's just I don't feel into it if I'll have somebody else doing the work, you know.
Right. Yeah, I gather that.
I'd like to be part of it. Yeah.
Is your day job work, is that noticeably busy?
Where I work during my day job?
Yeah.
Uh, somewhat busy, but hours are cut back and stuff, so
Oh, really?
not real busy, you know. Yeah.
I don't know. Donald Trump's been doing a pretty good job of making America great again. It seems like everybody's been working their asses off.
Yeah, we get, I'm just in a dying industry where my day job, I mean, we make magazines. I mean, nobody buys magazines anymore. It's going down, 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 and, So that kind of, that's what the problem is there. I mean, they just keep downsizing.
Is that why you...
my big problem with work is they sold the company I work for, Quad Tech. They sold that, and I work for Quad Graphics, but my job was supporting Quad Tech, so I lost them and a big portion of the work, and so it slowed me down quite a bit.
Is that why you're rebellious as to getting a smartphone? Is that you're reluctant to let them take over?
I'm just old, stuck in my ways.
There's always times
I use a compass and a map to navigate.
Yeah.
I do everything the old-fashioned way.
Yeah. Well, there's something to be said for not taking the path of least resistance. I know I use a navigating app on my phone now, but I certainly always have. I have two compasses with me because there's some cedar swamps that I go into that if I get off track and don't have a compass, man, good luck. You're sleeping out there without question. But yeah, when those maps don't work or go down, not very many guys that I know personally, Eastern hunters, I'm sure it's way different for Western hunters, obviously, but lack to have like basic navigation skills.
Yeah, it's a whole different world from when I grew up.
Right. That's one of the things I wanted to talk to you tonight about growing up deer hunting. I kind of wanted to, so I've been in and I think I worked myself into it, I don't want to say stressful, but it's been kind of stressful. I've gotten to this point now, and you've been talking to me for a couple years now. I was just your average basic deer hunter, and I decided to, start a platform for like-minded individuals, as I would say, that, just wanted to learn and evolve as deer hunters. And I've got myself to a point now where I've obtained so much information and I know, or I feel like I know what to do, but I'm limited with the amount of time that I have to do it, by both family and work. And I listen to your podcast all the time. I listen to the Hunting Beast episodes. I probably download on average 3 episodes a week and listen to them. And I do that about every week. I just keep recycling them because I keep learning from them. And
I better get you some new stuff.
I'm telling you, man, I'm on Jeff's ass. I know Mario's busy as hell, but boy, I'd love to have a new Hunting Beast podcast up. I've been recycling them for a while now. But the point I was getting to is that I've heard you bring it up a couple times, that's something that maybe going back, you made some sacrifices to get to where you are. And, I was curious to ask you if you would go back, if you would do things differently, or at this point now, what you've learned, what you've seen, how would you talk to, let's say, like a 21-year-old or 18-year-old Dan Infalt about approaching deer hunting?
It's kind of a struggle for me, and it's funny because what I want to say is I would tell that 20-year-old kid to not get caught up in the big buck drama and make it his whole world about chasing deer and and not to ruin his family relationships and stuff. And if I went back, maybe I'd change that. But I think if I was really honest, if I went back, I wouldn't change a thing, and I wouldn't want to know. Because if I knew, I'd change it. And I think it's just the way it is. And, the things that I went through in my life that were hard are what makes the man. If you look around you and you look at your friends, the great people you know, everybody I know that I consider a great person, just personality-wise, what they do for others and such, every one of those people grew up tough and made some hard decisions the wrong way, and that's what made them great people. If you look around and the people that you kind of despise, that you just don't get along with, and they're arrogant and such, always seem to be the people that were born rich, never had a problem, could buy their way out of the trouble, And I think that I made a lot of mistakes in my life in the way I went about things, and really put my life into pursuing deer to the point where I ignored my family and such. And I think I've talked about that before. But that's what made me who I am. And I'm happy with who I am. And I don't think I'd change anything. But and part of me too, when I look at these young people, I got a little envy for the guys that are like I was when I was young. Guys like that guy on my site, Joe Predator TC, Joe Rentmeister. That guy's a killer like I was. He's making all the mistakes I was making. I'm putting his life around it, but I envy it. I look up to him as he's going to be a well-known killer someday.
Well, there's something to be said for yourself personally and other guys that have done some legwork in how this can be done and how you can be more efficient. I'm sure you could tell yourself 20 years ago some information that you know now that would help you essentially balance the lifestyle, because you're way more efficient in how you approach your time in the woods now than I'm guessing that you were when you were 20.
Yeah.
What do you think some of the primary points for a guy that's going into this deer season who wants to bring it to the next level, like as far as how he's seeing things, how he's learning, like really taking conscious note of the time that he's investing in doing this and making the most out of it? Like, I know it's kind of a broad question, but I think you understand what I'm saying as far as like looking at a rub or looking at a scrape and not taking it for face value, about thinking on a different level, and really starting to see things differently.
The hardest part with anybody trying to be a great hunter or trying to really step it up a level is beating their own mind. You have to believe in yourself, and I think that's more important than anything. I really believe that if you got a shadow of doubt in you, it's going to ruin you. You got to have that confidence, that cocky confidence. Like when I go in the woods and I'm going after a buck, I fully believe every time I go out there I'm going to kill it. And if you go out there thinking you can't or you're not going to, that's going to kill you. You're going to leave early, you're not going to pay attention, you're going to make mistakes. I go on every hunt and I'm thinking about everything I'm doing so I don't make one mistake, because that's the night I'm going to kill that deer. And then when I don't kill it, the next day I go out there believing I'm going to kill it that day. You know what I mean? I really believe in myself. And I think that that's the point. When you get to that point, that arrogant cockiness of belief that you're going to do it and that you really know what you're doing, that's when you really become a killer, because you'll go out and you'll hunt more, you'll try harder, you'll think more. I mean, I sit on a tree stand and I'm thinking about my next move. I'm thinking about why am I seeing the things I'm seeing, or why am I not seeing the things I'm seeing or not seeing. And I'm thinking about where's my next move? How am I going about this? What did I miss in this woods? What is overlooked? What am I not seeing here? I know this buck's here. Where is he? I'm constantly got that on my mind. I'm dreaming about it. I'm thinking about it while I'm at work all day. And I think other people think about hunting, but maybe they're daydreaming about killing a deer or something. I'm planning and plotting and trying to figure out, what my next move is, as if it's a chess game. And I believe in what I come up with.
Sure, I absolutely do.
That's the hardest part, is getting these young guys to get the mindset. Get out of the negative attitude. Or you see so much information come at you. And a lot of these guys believe everything they hear, or they pick one or two people and they believe in them. And really, you got to take everything you hear with a grain of salt. You got to prove it for yourself, no matter who tells it to you. I don't care if it's me, if it's Miles Keller, or who. Take it and learn it for yourself. I mean, it's okay to trust in somebody, but there's a lot of false prophets out there. I know a lot of guys that have never killed a decent buck that are out, talking on forums, but, telling people how to hunt and matter-of-factly how they're wrong. And maybe those people really believe in themselves, but you got to go out and kill some deer before you really know what you're talking about. It's I don't know.
No, I completely agree with what you're saying, and I was thinking in my head too, like, there's something to be said for guys that just get it, right? There's certain guys that are just, and I don't want to say killers, but like they're just dialed in at the next level.
Mm-hmm.
Like you.
Well, there's a killer instinct in a lot of people, and I think a lot of people don't have it. I know a lot of people that tell me they had a deer close and they didn't get a shot and stuff. It ain't very often I get a buck I want to kill within 40 yards, and it gets in that circle and gets out alive. But it does. It should consider itself very lucky, because I'm putting the first arrow I have a chance at. First ethical shot I have is going into it, and I'm just concentrating on that shot. Where I think a lot of guys are in a panic mode of, what to do, and they let the deer get in and out, and but that killer instinct, there's something to be said about that.
Yeah.
I'm getting an arrow in that deer if it gets within my range.
I think it's something too that guys can learn. It's one thing that aggravates me with maybe new hunters or just hunters in general, like you were attesting to, guys that really haven't killed a lot of deer but have a lot to say. And, about getting some kills as a young deer hunter, or deer hunter in general, just getting some kills under your belt. And,
right.
Whether it's a doe or young buck or, whatever you have the opportunity to.
I've got boxes and boxes of racks from deer I've killed, and I've got 30 mounts on the wall. And when I think back to my most special times, the times when I enjoyed myself hunting the most, it wasn't any of those big bucks. It was when I was a kid, and I was out just hunting the first doe that came along, the first button buck, and killing deer, and the excitement of getting your first deer, your second deer, and figuring it out on your own was way more excitement than hunting these big bucks. And that's where the fun was. And when you get into this trophy hunting and you get in too young, it's kind of a burden, because you really don't know enough to be a great trophy hunter yet, because you don't have those kills under the belt, as you were saying. But you still haven't, you don't have that real enjoyment of hunting. I think you got to kind of put that aside and don't care about what your friends think, your neighbors think, or whatever. Just go out and have fun for a while. Get to enjoy hunting. And when you get really good at it and you're really good at killing deer, then step it up a notch. Hold off for something a little bigger. And when that gets easy, hold off for something a little bigger. And that's the gradual methodology that you should follow, not jump right into this, I'm going to be a trophy hunter. I knew guys that I hunted with that hunted for 7 years without ever shooting a deer because they didn't want to shoot something that they'd be laughed at for,
Sure.
When really, it's all in their head. Nobody cares what you shoot. I mean, even myself, if I shot, 150-inch buck this year, nobody's even remember the next year. Then I can remember whether I shot one or I didn't shoot one. Nobody's going to care. Or you. I mean, I don't even know what you shot last year. We talk all the time. I don't even remember. Does it really matter? You know what matters to? It matters to you. And that's what you got to make yourself happy. And if you're trying to please everybody else, you're going to have a miserable time hunting.
Yeah, and you guys say it right on your DVD pretty much every time, right? It's not about the kill. How's it go? What's the mantra?
It's not about the kill, it's about the path you take to get there.
Yeah, that's it. It's about embracing the struggle and enjoying the ride. That's the whole thing, because once you get to the tippy top, it gets harder and harder to, I guess, find that level of excitement as it is when you know you're moving in the right direction and progressing, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And
that's part of the problem with confidence with young people is because they put too much on their shoulders. They set their goals too high, and that's why they lack in confidence. You got to start out at the bottom to get to the top.
I think a lot of young people are disconnected from the real world right now. I mean, it's a problem. Young adults and the next generation, Jesus Christ, dude. Are you kidding me? These young guys that we're bringing into work right now as helpers, good Lord, dude, we're kind of fucked. Like, we need a little bit of a renaissance of embracing the struggle and the grit in this country, or we're going to find ourselves in a bad place, I think, in another 10, 20 years. You know what I mean? There's a hardcore group of people in this country that work their ass off every day to make this the best country in the world, but it's made the ride for the next generation pretty cushy, and there's not a lot of happiness in getting soft and going that direction. It's about embracing the struggle and moving forward, and I think deer hunting is a direct link to that. Like, it's all the most normal, grounded people that I talk to on a relative basis that I can communicate with and completely understand are very involved in deer hunting.
Yeah.
That could
the closer you get to nature, the more normalized people are.
Yeah. Well,
you get them into groups of people to get like rats. I mean, want to kill each other and everything else, right?
Yeah, I don't know if it's the repercussions of making mistakes and knowing that you're going to pay for them, or just, being disconnected from society for a little bit. And, I don't know, being out there, something to be said for sitting out in a tree stand freezing your ass off too, right? Like, because you want something so damn bad. By the way, we need to talk about getting you some warmer clothes after what you were telling me last year, man. I don't know why you do that to yourself.
Suffer ain't no good, right? You gotta suffer a little to enjoy it.
Yeah, you do, but you don't have to get frostbite. We gotta get you into just a touch of modern technology.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, I think about 20 years ago, I started actually wearing insulated boots. I used to wear those PVC ones from Walmart.
Yeah.
In that frigid cold weather.
You know what I've heard a lot of guys, not a lot of guys, but I've heard some intelligent guys talking about lately, is buying gear that's not hunting, like clothing, but it's the, the hunting clothing industry has copied a ton of their technology from hiking and mountaineering clothing. And you can find a lot of that stuff at discount prices and a fraction of the cost of having it in a great camo pattern. And I've heard of guys just spray rattle can and some camouflage, homemade camouflage on there and making some really legit hunting garments for, $20-$40.
Sure.
I like those little hacks, man. I don't like everybody having to think all the time that you got to be spending. In direct correlation with becoming a better hunter means that you have to be investing and spending money all the time, right?
Right. Yeah.
There's no end to the gear that's coming out right now. And I feel like a lot of times for myself, that'll give me this little bump of confidence like you were talking about. You know, you get a new product and they're telling you it's going to make you a little better hunter. And in your head, you're like, you rationalize it. And you might see a little YouTube video and you're like, oh, that makes sense. And that gives you that little bump of confidence. That's probably why a lot of those products can sell, right?
Yeah, probably.
Getting a bunch of trail cam photos of, a buck when you're. That's one thing I wanted to bring up. A good friend of mine asked me a question this week. He's hunting some public land in Ohio, and he found a giant set of sheds in a CRP field.
Mm-hmm.
And he's pretty confident that he knows a bedding area of a big mature buck. And he was thinking about going in there and doing like a mock scrape and putting a camera over it. And my advice to him was kind of to do it at a distance far away from his bed. You'll inevitably at one point in time probably catch him coming in there in the cover of darkness to check it out, and you'll at least know that he's alive and he's there and in the area, but you're not going to be impacting your area and letting him know you're there. Because in my head, and I don't know what your thoughts are, but I don't think you can do the mock scrape method without letting a big mature deer know that you're there, right?
Yeah, you got to catch them by total and complete utter surprise. There's got to be that shock factor when they walk out and you're there, and you don't have that when you go start setting up traps and stuff, and they catch you. A mock scrape with a camera over it, pile of corn with a camera over it, a camera over a trail. All that stuff's good stuff if you don't know what's going on. But if you got a set of sheds, you got a buck, and you know where he beds, why the hell would you want to give him a thumbs up and let him know you're there? Or a heads up or whatever, and tell him you're there? Sit back. If you know where he's bedding, you know his exits, go in there at the right time and kill him. I'd be concentrating on, okay, where else could he be bedding? Because they're going to be bedding all over the place over there. So that buck might move around a little bit, so I'd be hopping all over the place and picking the right day and time to hunt the bed that I think he's at, But to go in there and set up a trap before the season to get a picture of him, you can pretty much hang that picture on your wall instead of the rack, if that's what you want to do.
Yeah.
What are you out there for? Pretty pictures for your wall, or are you out there to kill a deer?
I do like the pictures, but...
Right, but if you know he's there, you'd probably rather have that rack on your wall,
Yeah.
There's the thing too. Is he struggling for confidence? I mean, he talks like he has confidence. I know where this buck beds. I have his sheds. I know he's in there, but I need a picture to confirm it. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
There's a confidence lacking thing there or something. But that's not to say he couldn't get pictures and still kill it. But every time you give that buck some intel that you're hunting him, he's going to get more nocturnal. He's going to skate around, come out of there a little different. Some bucks make a lot of mistakes, and you can get away with that and still kill them. Some bucks, he's going to hit that mock scrape, smell you've been there, disappear to some foreign bedding area, and you're not going to find him again. Or he's going to become real nocturnal.
So, if you wanted to do something like that and get some pictures, it would be safe.
I'd have it out of food sources someplace, ways away from that bedding.
Yeah. At the farthest point that you possibly maybe could be from his bedding area, right?
Well, I just wouldn't be up near where I'm going to hunt in his nighttime feeding area,
Right.
And that doesn't mean he's going to be nighttime now at this time of the year. You might get daytime pictures of him.
Sure.
You could be, 400 yards from the bedding area and get pictures of him and be fine. Just don't put that camera where you're going to hunt, or close to his bedding.
Have you seen, through your years of paying attention to this, how far, a mature buck will travel? Do you feel like the older they get, the tighter they sit, or do they still cover some ground and did they just tend to do it in the cover of darkness?
My experience is the older bucks, and they get 5, 6 or older, seem to get real tight. They seem to hold to areas better, they seem to be actually easier to kill if you know where they're at, which might sound like bizarre, might raise some eyebrows, but you know, it's like if you think back to some of the stuff we've said with Andre, you know, in the early videos where he did the bump and dump and stuff, and people are like, how do you go in there, kick a buck like that out, and then kill it the next day? Because those mature bucks just come back to that same bed area. They've been living there free forever, and they always survive in that bedding area. Younger bucks don't have that confidence, and they'll go run off to another bedding area. I see these younger bucks travel long distances. Some of them stay tight. Some of them travel long distance. They move to different bedding areas a lot. Big bucks own the territory. They get in the best bedding area and take it over and stay there longer. I see that a lot. I see them get to little tight spots. I mean, they'll have more than one bedding area, don't get me wrong, but it's a lot easier to kill them when they hold up in spots like that. Which goes back into that whole thing when people are like, well, the whole woods is full of beds. Yeah, but the big bucks are in key spots. So you got to know where those key spots are, and that's the terrain features we're always talking about.
Yeah. Do you know, one of the things I heard you say last week, and I probably listened to this episode 3 times. I'm not exaggerating when I tell you I continually listen to the hunting beasts because every now and then I just pick something up, you know, that I didn't pick up before. And I heard you say that I think I'm not hunting sign, I'm hunting a topographical feature next to bedding. And for whatever reason, that little thing clicked something in my head like a big switch where I was like, oh, yeah, that totally makes sense. And it's going to help me a lot this season. Like just that little thing about changing my mentality. I'm not hunting sign. I'm looking at this different. Yeah, there's rubs and scrapes here, but why are they here? That was so huge for me this spring when I was scouting. I can't tell you how much, you know, it seemed to help me out that I did your workshop this past winter and, you know, our conversations that I've had over the course of a year. And I covered less ground and I was just way more efficient. Like you said, like narrowing it down. Get rid of all this 90%, focus on this 10%, even in the big woods where you're covering, you know, acres and miles, to just break it down to little sections. And that's what I did. And I covered the transitions and the topographical features and man, like I was just I'm going into this season with a way better positive outlook.
Yeah, when you get good at looking at the property like that, you can go out, walk onto a piece of property, look at it, scan it with your eyes, and go, okay, if there's a big buck here, he's coming out of there, and you'll start being right. You know, I've got that now where I go into a property and I pretty much know with a good look around, I know where the big buck's going to come from.
Yeah,
and that's a huge advantage. You know, but you got to start looking at the properties right.
It takes
and most people, getting back into what you were saying a minute ago, most people can't walk past that cluster of rubs. They can't walk past that big scrape. They got to put up a stand there or whatever. And if you think about it, a buck, 95% of the day, he's bedded down. 95% of the sign he lays on the ground is done at night. So you're looking for that 5% of the sign that he's laying down during the day. It's going to be near those features, those land features where they bed, you know, where they move in daylight.
Yeah, he's typically not going to move outside of that range unless it's in the cover of darkness, right?
Right. You know, and when they feel the most freest about making a rub or making a scrape, when they feel at ease, it's usually at night. So, you know, most people are hunting night sign during the day. You know, and what I'm doing is I'm looking at the land features, where they bed and where they move in daylight, and concentrating on that. And that's a very little section of the woods, a very little section of the property you're on. I'm looking at, you know, 10% or less of the entire property.
You know, stepping back and something that you said earlier, we were talking about scrapes and rubs, and I asked you about making a mock scrape. One of the things that I've changed the way that I think when I go in the woods now is that I have in my head that am on white carpet with muddy boots, and there's no way for me to disguise where I'm going to go. Like I always used to be in the impression that rubber boots, spray them down, take all the steps, do everything. I don't think you can beat a deer's nose, even if you do have rubber boots and you have them all sprayed down. I mean, they can feel the disturbance or smell the disturbance in the earth and pick little things up like that.
It's obvious to a deer as if you saw footprints in the snow.
Yeah.
They know you're there.
Right. Anywhere you go, anything you do, they're going to come through possibly at night.
Yeah, and that probably opens up the next biggest problem that most hunters have. The first one was hunting the sign, right? That you find you can't walk past a rub or whatever. The second one would be hunting the same spots over and over again. If those deer know you're there or know you were there, they're going to avoid that spot, or they're going to start to avoid it and start going around it. And you'll still kill small deer there. But are you hunting small deer or mature deer? Mature deer don't make mistakes as much as what people think they do. You think about it where me and you are hunting. We're both hunting very high pressure properties. And a deer just don't get to be 5 or 6 years old by walking around these woods in daylight. I mean, you take a walk around in the rut on your hunting property and see how many tree stands you walk under with a guy in it. So if the deer were running around up and down through every funnel on the property, they'd be dying. So those mature bucks aren't really doing what people think they're doing. And you got to get in that little window of movement where they're moving, and you're not going to do that by hunting the same trees over and over again. I truly believe if you hung a map on the wall of your hunting property and threw a dart at it and hunted wherever that dart landed every time you went out, you'd do way better than hunting the same tree over and over again, regardless of the sign by the tree.
Yeah. Yeah, I've been thinking about that a lot, man. I've been scouting some super highly pressured public land around my house, and I went out in the winter and basically found everybody's tree stands. You're not supposed to leave your tree stands up here all year long in the state of Michigan, but I guess we just don't have the legal manpower to enforce it, and guys put their spots up and they leave them up, okay? So, which is fine with me because
then you know where they're at.
I know right where, you know where those spots are at. And
there's a big sign here that says, don't hunt here.
You can tell how long it's been there. You can tell how frequently they're there by, just this. You can tell what kind of hunter they are by where it's at and what it looks like, how high it's set up, the whole deal. So, yeah, it's been helping me kind of paint a picture of knowing where these people are and definitely knowing where these deer are going to avoid. And some things have clicked in my head as of recently, just looking at the landscape differently. And
let me throw this out there too. Is if you're running into tree stands where you're scouting, you're not scouting in the right places.
Right.
Because those big bucks are going where nobody goes.
Sure.
And in really, really high pressure areas, a lot of times it's places that don't have trees you can get a climber in, or trees you can hunt very easily, stuff off to the side or right by the road or whatever. But they're where people aren't going, or they wouldn't make it to 5. I mean, it's possible you could be in the woods, and I know woods like this, where you go in there is no place that there isn't somebody hunting. In that case, if you're hunting mature deer, pack up and leave. There are none there. If there's no place he can hide without dying, he's dead. You're hunting a ghost.
Right.
So you got to find a property or a spot on that property where people just don't go. And then you got to have the restraint to only go in there once or twice a year because otherwise it'll turn into just like the other spots where everybody goes.
There's an interesting thing by my house. The big piece of public land is a big waterfowl refuge.
Mm-hmm.
So in the fall, there's no entry from, I think, September 15th to December 15th. No entry, and it's marsh, and it's,
Mm-hmm.
I think it's 1,000 acres in a parcel of 2,800 acres. So it's a giant chunk of marsh, and the deer just get huge, but they live and die in there, you know?
Mm-hmm.
But every now and then, a guy gets close enough on the fringe, or, you know, a deer makes a mistake, and they kill a giant out of there. I've watched it happen for, you know, the last 10 years that I've been paying attention to. And boy, it's a challenging, tough. I know you and I looked over maps at it. It's a challenging, tough place to hunt, but yeah, I'm looking at things a lot differently this year when I did all my scouting, and I don't know. I have high expectations this year that I'm going to, you know, achieve better results than I have in the past.
Cool.
So, I wanted to ask you something. I just recently listened to a podcast with Joe Rogan and Ted Nugent, and I know you were very busy, and I know you don't really listen to podcasts, but I know you're familiar with who Ted Nugent is, right?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Were you a Ted Nugent fan?
Yeah, I kind of like him.
You like his
In
music?
certain ways.
Like his...
I like his music, and I like what he's about, and who he is, and what he stands for. I mean, he gets a little crazy sometimes, but don't we all?
Yeah, I figured you'd really like Ted Nugent. You get a little crazy sometimes, and I just listened to him talk for 3.5 hours, and he brought up a topic that's kind of a hot button topic for everybody right now. And I know you've had, you know, been vocal in the past about it, and you have an opinion. And I know you're a guy that's intelligent, well-read, and when it comes to CWD, I know it's something that you have an opinion about. And I heard Ted Nugent last weekend talk, and, you know, he sounded like he had some facts to back up what he was saying. And it kind of lined up with what I've heard you talk about with, you know, the onset of CWD here in the state of Michigan. And I know it's something that you've been close to and dealt with. But I was just kind of interested to get your 2 cents on it, because it's just getting here. And, you know, there's opinions on both sides, obviously. And I know you've been through it already. And Ted Nugent had some strong things to say about basically CWD's, you know, it's bullshit. There's nothing we can do to essentially stop it. And I was curious to hear hear you reiterate what I had heard you say before.
Okay. Yeah, well, I got really involved in it when it came here. It was in my backyard, and it was a thorn in my side the way they handled it here. And because of that, I got very politically involved in what was going on. And I studied it quite depth, and I talked to a lot of biologists. I talked to a lot of people, and got a lot of facts. And really, the DNR in Wisconsin, when Wisconsin was being run by Doyle, Governor Doyle, who was a Democrat, was really manipulating the facts to get stuff done that they wanted to get done. And a lot of the stuff that they did and said is being used as fact now for other states and stuff, and it's not fact. CWD, first off, is not really a disease. It's a prion. So it doesn't die, period. If it gets in the soil, it stays there forever. If it, we've had deer farms where deer farm, they get CWD in there. So they kill off all the deer. They poured gasoline all over the soil and burned it. burned the property, and ended up in court for 10 years. And when they're finally allowed to put deer back in there, they put clean deer in there, and they immediately got CWD, even though they did all that work on the soil and everything else. Now, CWD sticking in the soil and the prions, it might not sound like that big of a deal, like you can contain that, but if you take topsoil or sod or even fill from Wisconsin, you get over to Michigan, you now got CWD. You get a vulture to eat on a dead carcass of a deer that died of CWD. You can't you digest CWD prions, it doesn't kill them. So if it flies down to New Mexico tomorrow and takes a crap, now New Mexico has CWD. If a coyote eats it and walks 100 miles and takes a poop, now you get CWD. If a guy comes here and shoots a deer, drives it to his house in Indiana, skins it out and throws the hide in the backyard, now you got CWD. If you buy deer urine from a deer farm that has CWD and you squirt it on a scrape in New Mexico, now New Mexico has CWD. The stuff is in everything that has to do with deer blood, and it's here to stay. Even the fact of like ticks get blood in them from a deer, then they get on birds. And it's a known thing that, maybe not to the average person, but it's a known thing to biologists that ticks travel on birds. So birds can fly hundreds of miles, and that tick hops off, and now you got CWD and whatever it bites or whatever. It's crazy. You're not getting rid of it. It's here to stay. You can't, you kill all the deer. If you bring them back, they're going to get CWD.
Yeah.
It's a dire thing, and it shouldn't be taken as a joke. Like, oh, this is a joke. It's not a joke. It's serious. It could probably wipe out our whole deer herd. But the fact of the matter is, there's really not much you can do about it.
Right.
It's already everywhere. I mean, if they found a deer in New Mexico wandering around stupid, they killed it, they tested it, it had CWD. They never found another one for hundreds of miles anywhere around it. Where'd they come from? They're finding them everywhere. And the places that don't have it haven't tested for it. It's something we're going to have to deal with, but there's no cure for it. There's no way to solve it. I mean, there is something where I think it was 24% of the population of whitetails has a slight immunity to CWD, but it's not immune. But they have a greater immunity than the rest of the herd. It's something genetic. And that's something that they could study and find out why and see if they can enhance those genetics. But that's the kind of stuff they need to be working on, not killing all the deer. You kill all the deer, you kill that 24% that's got that immunity too. What good does killing deer and testing them do? All you're seeing is where the disease is traveling to. And they had the DNR here was trying to push that getting the numbers down low would stop it from spreading. So they hired some people to do research on it, some biologists and scientists, and they did a research project to prove that if you lowered the deer numbers, that disease would spread slower. And this woman who ran the research, what she found was that when they lowered the population, when it got down to a real small population, the mature bucks, which are usually the ones that have the CWD, would increase their home range to breed more does. So they'd go, instead of staying in like a half-mile area when it was a heavy population, they'd get up to like 5 or 10 miles, and they'd spread the disease out further. So you can't win any way you look at it.
So do you think that they're making rash decisions not based on biological evidence, but more on a political, like, for what reason?
I don't know exactly what they're doing in Michigan. In Wisconsin, see, I don't know what's going on in Michigan. I know what happened here.
But they're going to, okay, wait,
we had a really high population of deer. And they were trying to get the law changed to force us to kill these deer. And hunters wouldn't go along with it, and they had to have hunter approval. When it was a disease, they could bypass the hunters and say, nope, we got to kill them. And that's exactly what they did. And in Wisconsin, I don't know how Michigan's run, but our DNR is run, the head of the DNR is our governor. And at the time that this went on, our governor was Governor Doyle, and he was working really close with the auto insurance companies. And I can tell you this, when he claimed he had no association with the auto insurance companies, even though everybody was pointing out that he was receiving huge donations from them when he was making these orders to kill all the deer. And when he left his job as governor, they gave him a really cushy, big dollar job, just sitting in an office. You don't do nothing, getting paid to run insurance. He doesn't do nothing. So something was up there. I don't know if that has anything to do with it or not, but I do know that they were ordering all these deer to be killed, and that wasn't solving the problem. I mean, I had, I could probably still find this stuff, but I had DNR people send me letters and stuff, thanking me for what I was doing. One guy sent me a copy of a letter that their head of the DNR, which was a lawyer that was put there by Doyle, sent out to all the DNR people saying that they were going against the grain and that they had to follow the protocol, and this is how they would answer questions about CWD and stuff. And this is a guy who's not a biologist or anything. He's a lawyer who's hired to run a DNR. He's telling them how to answer the questions on CWD. What does that tell you? It was nuts, and it was all political. They all knew. I mean, you talk to the biologists on the side, and they, you know, if you got them where they knew nobody else was listening, they'd tell you that there was nothing they could do to stop the disease. The killing of these deer wasn't going to stop it. It wasn't going to stop the spread of it. It wasn't going to stop it from getting in the soil. It was already here. Once it's in your state, you're done. If it's not in your state, you can take precautions to not let people transfer deer into your state. You could ban the sale of deer urine, which none of them will do because that's a business. You could double fence deer enclosures, which none of them ever do because it's a business. But really, it's going to be everywhere anyways. I mean, there's nothing you can do other than do research and maybe find out what this 24% immunity thing is and see if you can build on that.
I'm looking forward to the opportunity I'm going to have here soon. I'm having our state biologist sit down to do a podcast with us, and we're going to talk about this. And the gloves are going to be off.
You should research it real good before you talk to them, so that you can ask them some hard questions.
I feel like I'm pretty well. I feel like I'm loaded for bear, man. Like from both sides of it. But you know, I found some stuff out that I wouldn't have known without investing my own time and reading, looking into it a little bit farther than what I've just been told. So, yeah, I think I do have some tough questions, and I trust him. You know, I know our state biologist. He listens to our podcast every week, and him and I talk back and forth online, and I trust him as a friend. So, you know, I want to have a conversation with him and get his opinion, and they're going to, you know, potentially stop baiting sites here in Michigan, which I'm, you know, whatever. The same thing with the tree stands, right? The guys that put the bait out, I know where they are. It's not a big deal to me. But that's one thing that they potentially are going to be changing. And then, yeah, obviously way extended deer seasons and tag numbers and limits and whatnot. And they're going to be, you know, taking way more deer out than what they have been. So I just want people to be informed.
So now if you're stopping baiting, that can help because the deer eating that corn, if you get saliva on corn, potentially the next deer eating the corn could get the CWD too. However, I mean, if you're eating clover, it's the same thing. If you're eating apples, it's the same thing under an apple tree. You know, if you watch deer go into a field, they eat in the same spot over and over again.
Well, shit,
you know as well as I do that the DNR wants to ban baiting in the first place. It makes a good excuse, which I don't care either way because I don't bait, but I don't care if other people do. But lowering the numbers, I don't see how that's going to help anything.
Right. Yeah. I'm interested to have the conversation with him. So.
Bring up that study. If you search for it hard enough, you might even be able to find it. There's news articles about it back when it happened.
All right. The last thing I want to wrap up on. I usually keep you on the phone pretty long, but tonight, I'll just be honest with you, I broke my computer charger, so we're on limited time here. I'm watching our percentage, and there's no way I can make it go up because the green light stopped coming on. So, a couple things. Boy, I don't even know if I should open this can of worms because this might take up some time. But, I guess this is a good one to talk about, and guys that listen to this podcast will enjoy it. So, you're Wired to Hunt, Mark Kenyon. You've been on his podcast before.
Yeah.
He just had John Eberhart on, and they talked about saddle hunting. And the next day I called John, and John and I talked for an hour. I have a lot of respect for John. He's done a ton for me as far as helping me be a better deer hunter here in the state of Michigan. But he was talking about, saddles being like the end-all, be-all, and that you could never do what he does in a tree stand. And, I understand he's at a level, and he's been doing it for so long that he's so confident in his system that there would be no reason that he would want to change. But on the other hand, I know you, and you're a tree stand guy, a mobile tree stand guy, arguably have made the highest quality, lightest weight mobile hunting tree stand and steps probably that anybody will ever lay their hands on as of till now. And you've been consistently successful long-term mobile hunting with a tree stand. So I don't buy the saddle is the end-all, be-all. But
yeah, I can get that stand in any tree. You can get a saddle on.
Yeah, you can, for the most part.
I get that thing into bushes.
Right. But I don't think John knows that because he's never been exposed to a guy like you who has a mentality like him, but you guys have taken two different roads to essentially come to the same path. And it's funny listening to both of you because I know the guys, the Down South Hunting Podcast had you both on and you kind of did like a scent debate.
Yeah.
And man, I'm sure it got a ton of downloads because John Eberhart, Dan Infalt, two of the living legends of public land deer hunting, debating topics. But I just thought at some point in time it might be interesting to do a podcast with the two of you, because I talk to you both very frequently. I know how level-headed that you guys are when it comes to being open to evolving, basically. And I thought it'd be an interesting conversation to have the two of you, not having you essentially pinned at each other, trying to find faults in each other's systems, but having an open conversation about how each one of you has gone about getting to the point where you are. And I think you guys would both walk away finding out that you're very similar guys in the fact that it's always been about deer hunting. It's never been about selling products.
Let me stop you for a second here and address this. When we did that podcast on scent control, the reason I agreed to that was because I had a lot of respect for John. I thought the guy's a great hunter. He's killing a lot of bucks. The only thing that we differed on was scent control, and he went to one extreme and I go to the other. And I said, yeah, this sounds like a cool podcast, kind of both debate our tactics. And we did it, and I thought it went okay. And John got a lot of negative feedback on social media and stuff. And I did too, by people that, believe in scent control, which you got to kind of expect. But John got real angry about it and said a lot of bad things about me. He even called me a poacher on another site. And I just got to walk away from him. I don't want to go down that road because the things he said about me were pretty bad.
Really?
Yeah. I actually was about ready to hire a lawyer. And I know you don't know any of that and stuff, but I can't go down that road. I just don't want to be around him. And I will never say anything bad about him. I think the guy's a great hunter, but he seems to think that I was out to get him or something with that podcast on scent control. So I don't know if you talked to him about this, but he's even said some things to another guy in a recent podcast where that guy's podcast had to tell him, you can't say that stuff about him on our podcast.
No kidding.
Yeah. The guy has something. I don't have any gripes with him, but he's got something against me.
I don't think it's against
that scent control podcast.
I don't think it's against you. I think it's against anybody that doesn't agree with him, if that makes sense.
That could be. That could be.
Yeah.
But, I don't want any trouble with the guy. I mean, I'm not the kind of guy who's vengeful or anything else like that. I just stay away from people like that.
Sure.
So getting me on the same podcast with him, I don't think will ever happen again.
All right, we got that clarified. Well, I love the truth, Dan. That's why you're one of my favorite people to talk to, because I know you're not going to sugarcoat it for me. So, well, I'm glad that I did. I'm glad that I did cover that up. But last thing, before we wrap this up, I kind of wanted to dive into a scenario, I guess a hunting story, something that I've heard you talk about before quite a few times, that every time I hear about it, I get intrigued. And I was wondering, like, if in kind of detail you could hit the points where this story first started and how it evolved and how you came to close it, and, like, at this point, what you've learned from it. The Rome legend buck is a deer I've heard you talk about time and time again, tell some interesting stories, and I think, if I'm speaking for you, it was a hunt for a deer that probably was a relatively large impact in the progression of your mentality of deer hunting. Would that be an exaggeration, or is that fairly accurate?
Oh, I don't agree with that, because it's kind of a recent deer, the Rome legend deer. It's only about 5 years ago when I shot that, so I don't think that changed my mentality. But it was a cool hunt.
And it was a culmination of information that you've built over the course of the time that we've been talking about here tonight, right? Like when you were a young onset hunter to when you were, standing in the grocery store and overheard someone say they spotted a big buck?
Yeah, I heard rumors about it and went out looking for it, found it. It was showing up on the public land. It was a real nice 10-pointer. I went hunting with it with one of the guys in the Beast, and we both split up, went to 2 different bedding areas in the area where I had shined it a couple times. And it was pre-rut, and I was walking into my tree real slow, and you got to go through this little doe bedding area where it doesn't hold does very often, but it holds them every here and there. You kick a doe out of there. And a doe stands up, and he stands up with her. And he's about 25 yards from me. And that was my first encounter in the woods. And I started to nock an arrow, and just as I got it knocked, he ran and she ran, and they both ran 2 different ways. So I climbed up a tree right there, figuring he's going to come back because I split him into doe. And sure enough, just before dark, he came back. But I should have set up downwind of where the bedding area was, because he circled the bedding area, winded me, and then left. So then he kind of disappeared. I tried a little bit, but I never got on him again that season. But I figured he would be back in pre-rut again because they seem to do the same thing year after year. And I started shining and stuff and saw him the next year on the private property across the street from the public, and he was staying on the private property. And I was monitoring for when he'd come across, and then I heard some chatter around that people were seeing him again. So I went and checked, and that particular bedding area has a rub line that doesn't go right up to it, but when that rub line opens, and I sit in that bedding area, I always see a good buck there. And that particular bedding area probably killed, I don't know, 8 or 10 trophy bucks out of that bedding area, and probably 7 of them out of the same bed. And so it's a really good spot, especially pre-rut because it's right up against some doe bedding areas. So when that rub line opened back up, I decided to go in there and go after him again, figuring he's in there. And all his sign was back there. There was scrapes with huge tracks in them and stuff. And all kinds of people were hunting him. Everybody in town was hunting him, and everybody was talking about him. It's no longer a secret. Everybody was shining. There was cars lined up to see him, every night. So the first night I hunted him, I saw that rub line was opened up. I went straight to that primary bed where I figured he'd be and set up. And about, I want to say half an hour before closing, he got out of his bed, 75 yards from me. And when I shot him, it was closing time right underneath my tree. And there was hunters as close as 200 yards from me. They were all over the place because of that buck being in the area. That's the Rome legend in a nutshell.
Well, thanks, Dan.
Sure.
I appreciate you taking time out of your midsummer Friday night. But, man, I was just dying to have a good conversation about deer hunting. You and I were talking earlier about we started this off actually talking about young hunters and not worrying about what everybody else is doing. Focus on what you want to do and what makes you happy. And last night I watched a deer hunting video on YouTube, and it's worth a mention because I thought you might enjoy it, Jeff. Some of the guys that the hunting beast guys. There's a group of guys in northern Michigan. It's called Michigan Gone Wild, and you can find them on YouTube. And they do a deer camp video every year, and they did a good job of focusing on that. They have guys in their camp that have different goals, and some guys are going out and shooting spikes and 4 points, and some guys are out after 5, 6 plus year old big old mature swamp bucks. But these guys are all buddies, and they all go deer hunting together, and they did a good job of capturing it. So it's worth a mention for anybody that wants to check out a good deer hunting video on YouTube is the guys at Michigan Gone Wild. I think you'd enjoy it a lot. So
cool.
Dan, thank you. And I know it's probably been the thing you guys have been the most active on right now has been your Facebook, right?
Yeah. Jeff's been keeping up with that really good.
Yep. He shot me a couple texts today. He usually does shoot me a text when you guys are going to do something live, and I look at the people that are commenting and on there, and it's an unbelievable number of guys. It's awesome. So, and I see good conversation on there every day,
Yeah.
I don't know where you're going to find a better group of, deer hunters that are just trying to become better deer hunters, right?
Right.
And friendly guys. Like, have you guys had to do much monitoring on the Facebook thing?
Not yet. It's been pretty clean.
Good.
But, we're ready. I mean, if anybody gets out of hand, we're just going to remove them just like we do on the website. So.
Yeah, no, it's awesome. I noticed the same thing.
It's got to stay clean. I mean, I want to be good for kids and everybody. And, I don't want people to be afraid to say something or afraid to show a picture or something because of internet asses. I just want them to be able to be who they are. And we're just not going to tolerate it. If it goes that direction, we'll eliminate it.
Awesome. Okay, Dan. Well, thanks again. And you know what? Maybe we'll do one more of these before the season gets going. But I don't know, man. I'm
Maybe we
chomping
could
at
do
the bit.
one live when you come out and help with the sticks. You still coming out?
I want to. Do you have an idea of when that might
Probably
be?
going to be in August. Probably
Okay.
going to be in August. We're going to probably start taking orders in a week or so. I'm not positive on that, but we're we're to the point where we're about to inspect our product, and if we like it, we're going to hit go. So,
Awesome. Yeah, Jeff said
which
you.
I think we'll like it.
I talked to Jeff earlier today, and he had mentioned that you were gonna find some information out today. So, yep, August is.
Yeah, it got shipped, but I don't have it yet.
I got you. Yeah, August is a pretty good month for me, really. And I'd love nothing more than to come over there for a weekend. And you don't mind if I stay in a tent in your yard, do you?
No, not at all.
I didn't think you would.
Yeah, we got a lot of big crap going on. We got that farm video is going to be out within a week or so.
Oh, is it?
It's actually done. We're just I want to print up a back load of them before I open the doors because we usually do a huge number when we start selling. So
You know,
I want to make sure I'm prepared this time.
I know when I talked to you earlier today, I told you that I wanted to touch on that on today's, but I know that's like its own podcast. So maybe once I get that, maybe once I get that and watch it, then we could do like a review podcast or something on that because I do have a ton of
Yeah, you probably
questions.
have some stuff to talk about.
Yep.
There's a pretty cool hunt in there that I haven't watched since I filmed, and it was pretty fun to watch it as I was editing it because it's just been sitting in my editing thing.
Mm-hmm.
But a buck I passed like about 20 years ago, real big buck, and I let him walk past, and I was looking at the video thinking, wow, I should have shot that thing. But
All right. Well,
in fact, memories editing it.
that sounds like a good plan. I'll get it, watch it, and then because I could do a podcast right now with you on farm betting. I have a ton of questions about that, but once I watch that, it'll make it better. So,
All right.
okay, Dan. Thanks a lot.
All right. We'll talk to you later.
Bye.
Bye.